Nobody, and I mean nobody, knows how to use the assault rifles in Apex properly. So today I'll teach you how to use every assault rifle in Apex, all the way from the stats to smaller tips and tricks for every gun to optimize your performance. Let's start off with the Havoc. The Havoc is the energy assault rifle, dealing 18 damage per shot and 17 if you have a turbocharger equipped. It fires at a controllable rate of 672 rounds per minute or 11 shots a second. The stock Havoc comes with 24 bullets in the magazine, which goes up to 36 bullets in a purple magazine. Its recoil is pretty manageable with a mostly straight recoil pattern, and thanks to its lower rounds per second can be jitter aimed pretty easily. The Havoc is pretty bulky, and as such you'll want to look for good sights and stray away from using the iron sights. It is effective in most ranges, from close range to medium and even far ranges, and I'd recommend getting a 2 or 3 times to get the most out of it at all these ranges. And I'm sorry to say, there aren't really any amazing pay-to-win skins that help you with the size of the model, you just have to get a new sight. What's so special about the Havoc is there is a bit of a trade-off with the turbocharger, since yes, getting a turbocharger will allow you to shoot immediately, but it also lowers the weapon's damage per second from 202 to 190, which is still more than enough to get a kill. I'd still argue you hit a huge power spike when you find a turbocharger and another when you get a magazine or a sight, but the Havoc is already great off the ground. I'd really only switch the Havoc for another weapon if I don't think that I can find a turbocharger in time and I want to either swap to another ammo class or something like a Volt. The Havoc has a slower reload speed, but it can be animation cancelled to save you a lot of time. While there isn't a noticeable difference between a tactical reload, where you leave one bullet in the magazine, and a normal reload, you can shave off almost an entire second by reload cancelling your Havoc. To reload cancel, you start a reload, wait for the ammo counter in the bottom right to update, then quickly swap back and forth between your weapons. The Havoc has a near hit scan range of about 50 meters, after which it starts traveling slower and dropping off. But thanks to it being an energy weapon, it has very little bullet drop, and you just need to make some minor adjustments to compensate for ranges up to 400 meters away. This is why the magnification scope comes in handy. The Havoc hits a power spike with a new sight, to a certain degree a new stock, as it allows you to aim down sights faster, which help you get the most out of abusing the charge up, and most importantly, as I mentioned previously, when you get the turbocharger. Keep in mind that in this case, the turbocharger will be a trade-off for higher damage. It's not a straight up upgrade. It has a very wide hipfire reticle, and there isn't much of a point of using the Havoc to hipfire past 5 meters away from your target. If you do aim down sights, the Havoc slows you down as much as any assault rifle would, but it's not the end of the world. That being said, try to avoid taking duels with a SMG or wingman wielder if you aren't confident in your tracking abilities. If you don't have a turbocharger, the Havoc is still very useful and can surprise your enemies, especially in the early game. Try playing angles and pre-rev up the Havoc by holding your fire button as you head out of cover. If you time this right, you can start shooting the exact moment that you see your enemy. You can also continuously tap your fire button to edge the Havoc and keep it ready to fire, but keep in mind, it can go off at any time. Moving on, we have the Flatline, the heavy ammo rifle, and it is a heavy puncher. It deals 18 damage per body shot in full auto and can be equipped with a anvil receiver to deal 43 damage per single fire shot instead. The full auto mode fires at a slower rate than the Havoc, at 10 bullets per second, making it more than ideal for jitter aiming if you are a mouse and keyboard player. The stock Flatline comes with 20 bullets and can be upgraded to 30 bullets with a purple magazine, but thanks to its higher damage per bullet, it can do very well without a purple magazine. The recoil is a little bit more punishing, but it can be countered by pulling down and to the right with some slight turns starting as you're halfway through the magazine, or as I mentioned earlier, by jitter aiming your mouse to almost completely negate the recoil. Just like with the Havoc, the Flatline has a very bulky model and as such will be blocking most of your vision when you're trying to use the iron sights. The Flatline is effective in all ranges, but will generally be used in the short to mid-range, and as such many would recommend using the 2 or the 3 times scopes. Thanks to its very forgiving hipfire, you could use the aim down sights for targets that are farther away and then hipfire anyone within 5 to 10 meters. But there are still some Flatline skins that push the envelope when it comes to better iron sights. For example, we have the Clenched Fist, which is a lot more cleaner visually with slightly better iron sights than the default Flatline skin, or the Teal Zeal. If you buy the Champions edition of the game, you can also get Slayer's Lancer, which also has some pretty clean iron sights as well. The scopes will come especially in handy when you have an anvil receiver, as this will turn your gun from a close to mid-range weapon into a jack of all trades and allow you to snipe enemies far away for a devastating 43 damage per shot. Using your single fire mode with an anvil receiver will be slower than using it normally and consume 2 bullets per shot. It doesn't change the bullet speed, velocity, or trajectory full auto mode. The anvil can actually be equipped on the R301 as well, but thanks to the single fire damage, I'd argue it is the most effective on the Flatline. To the point where if you find an anvil, you might want to hold on to it just in case you find a flatline later in the game. The flatline is a endgame weapon, and there aren't really any other upgrades to it, but you could carry something like a prowler or a hemlock, maybe even a 30-30, just to hold on to attachments and heavy ammo until you switch to it. The flatline has a damage per second of 180 in full auto and 125 when using the anvil receiver, but keep in mind, the farther away a target is, the more important controllability and single fire damage is. For example, the 30-30 repeater, an actual marksman rifle, only has a damage per second of 97. When it comes to reloading, the flatline has a pretty noticeable difference between a full reload and a tactical reload, and you can shave up to about half a second by reload cancelling. The flatline bullets are pretty slow and heavy, and it doesn't really have a real hit scan range unless you count within 10 meters. You're going to have to lead your shots ever so slightly at most ranges. It has a very noticeable bullet drop, where the first mark on the 3x ranger scope shows its bullet drop for 100 meters, and the second one being about 300 meters away. The flatline hits a power spike with a new sight, as it makes it way easier to fire, and another power spike once you upgrade a magazine. But you don't really need a magazine to deal devastating damage in the first place, and the purple magazine allows you to one-clip up to 2 enemies with 1 magazine. Aiming down sights with the flatline slows you down as much as any other assault rifle would. And as I mentioned previously, if you get close enough to fight the CQB weapon, start using your hipfire instead. This also allows you to dodge and avoid yourself getting hit more than an SMG wielder. The flatline is one of the best guns when it comes to versatility, which is something I preach a lot about on this channel. Fully decked, you can use it as a marksman rifle, mid-range rifle, and a close-range weapon. This means that you can use any other weapon, preferably a shotgun as a secondary, and cover all your bases. Do not sleep on the flatline. And also, I lied. There's actually another heavy ammo assault rifle, and that is the Hemlok. Spelled with a K, not CK. Its main purpose is as a mid to long range burst weapon, dealing 20 damage per body shot, and with a burst of 3, dealing up to 60 damage per burst. And contrary to popular belief, the single fire mode does not have a higher damage per second than the burst fire. The burst fire Hemlok has a raw DPS of 138, and when swapped to single fire, only deals 128 damage per second. And that's because the burst fire mode has a fire rate of 6.9 shots per second, and with the single fire, assuming you can spam your shooting button as fast as possible, caps out at 6.4. The one benefit of the burst fire mode is that it's fairly easy to control the recoil, especially over longer ranges, as all you need to do is pull down in a very easy to memorize pattern, assuming that you let the recoil reset before bursting again. If you spam burst, it goes in a bit of a trickier zigzag pattern. There are many guns with terrible models and iron sights, and the Hemlok is no different. It very much gets in the way when you try to aim down sights, and there aren't really any good pay-to-win Hemlok skins, and most of them just get even more in the way instead. But if you manage to get close enough, the hipfire is pretty easy to control. As for scopes, I'll recommend anything from a 2x or a 3x ranger. There's not much of a reason to use a 1x sight for anything else than cleaning up your sight picture. Some players swear by the Hemlok, but most experienced players swap it out for something like a flatline or a car SMG later in the game. It is a bit awkward to use the Hemlok as an attachment slave, since no heavy weapons or SMGs take the barrel stabilizer anymore. You can get almost half of a second shaved off the reload animation by using reload cancelling. The Hemlok really shines once you get a barrel stabilizer, especially a high level one, as it significantly tightens the spread and makes it a lot easier to control your singular bursts. You really need any type of sight to aim with it, so that's another power spike you want to keep in mind as well. Overall, I wouldn't recommend using the Hemlok as anything else than something to shoot with in the early to mid game, and I suggest trading it in for really any other weapon as you progress later into the game. One weapon that's an upgrade from the Hemlok, despite being a different ammo type, would be the R301, which is the light ammo assault rifle. The R301 is a solid, consistent gun that is pretty easy to control, leading to surprisingly easy one-clips. On its own, the singular shot damage isn't too high at 14 damage per bullet, but just like the flatline, the R301 can be equipped with an anvil receiver, which turns the single fire mode into 35 damage instead. Unlike the flatline, the R301's full auto mode fires at 13.5 shots per second, and unless you're a demon, you won't be able to jitter aim at that speed. The stock R301 comes with 18 bullets in the magazine and can be upgraded to 28 bullets with a purple. Due to the low damage per bullet and the very fast fire rate, you rarely will get one clips without a magazine, though it's not mathematically impossible, as a full magazine adds up to about 252 raw damage. The R301's recoil is famously easy to control, and all you need to do is pull down and to the left. Its model isn't amazing, but it's definitely doable to use it without a sight. That being said, most legendary skins don't do anything but get in the way, so I don't recommend equipping any new skins on your R301 unless you want to make aiming harder for yourself. You can equip any sight with it, but seeing as it is an assault rifle with an easier to use recoil, as well as having the possibility of equipping the anvil, you're probably better off using marksman scopes such as a 2x or 3x. The Anvil Receiver 301 works just like the Flatline when it has an anvil equipped. The damage is raised to 35 damage per body shot, it's easier to control over range, consumes 2 bullets per shot, and has the same bullet properties as when full auto. This means that you can use any other weapon, preferably a shotgun as a secondary, and cover all your bases. The R301 hits a power spike with a blue or purple magazine as it allows you to one-clip more easily, and another power spike once you get the high-level barrel stabilizer. But since it's so easy to control its recoil, you're going to do just fine without a stabilizer to begin with. The R301 is the yin to Flatline's yang, and it is a bit of an endgame weapon, but more so if you're looking for a weapon to primarily use in the closer to mid-ranges, with the option of switching to the Anvil's single fire if you need to poke over range. You can generally upgrade to the R301 from light ammo SMGs such as the R99 or the Alternator, and as I mentioned earlier, in some cases it makes sense to make the swap from something like a Hemlok as well. Also, as a thank you for watching this far, this applies to all the weapons in this video, namely the assault rifle class. These weapons all have a movement speed penalty when aiming down sights. Specifically, it puts you at 86 velocity, which is slower than SMGs and pistols, meaning that they can outstrafe you in a straight 1v1 fight. If you are using an assault rifle and get up close against one of these weapons, consider hip firing to avoid yourself turning into a stationary target. I'll be releasing these guides for all the weapon categories, so make sure that you liked and subscribed not to miss future ones. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all tomorrow.